In 2016, Anthony Bourdain met an actress in Rome. Within 2 years, he was dead. Friends watched him become obsessed, flying across the world just to see her. For days, he cut people out of his life, ignored his 11-year-old daughter, and lost himself completely. The night before he died, she sent him a brutal, final message that shattered him. What really happened in that French hotel room would remain hidden until investigators found his phone. The truth about his final hours is darker than anyone imagined. Anthony Bourdain was born on June 25, 1956 in Manhattan. His family wasn't religious, but it was deeply tied to culture and words. His father, Pierre, worked in classical music and juggled multiple jobs to make ends meet. His mother, Gladys, was a strict and brilliant copy editor at the New York Times. Anthony grew up with his younger brother Christopher in Leonia, New Jersey, just 8 minutes from Manhattan. The town was wealthy, filled with big houses and well-off neighbors. But behind the doors of their own home, money was always tight. His parents spent more than they earned, sometimes using inherited money to stay afloat. They sent him to private school and took him on European vacations, but they were often just barely getting by. This odd mix of privilege and struggle shaped how Anthony saw the world. He felt close to luxury, but never truly part of it. That feeling of being an outsider followed him through life. One moment, though, changed everything. When he was around 10, the family visited the seaside town of Arachon in France. A local fisherman offered Anthony a raw oyster fresh from the sea. While others hesitated, Anthony swallowed it down. The taste, briny, salty, strange, hit him like nothing else. He later said it felt like the future. That one oyster didn't just spark his love for food. It lit a fire. He saw food as adventure, as risk, as something that could change the way you see the world. In school, he showed signs of rebellion early. He read banned books, listened to punk rock, and wrote edgy essays full of anger and dark humor. He admired writers like Hunter S. Thompson and got caught stealing things. By the time he was 14, he was already using drugs. His mother pushed for high standards, but he fought against rules. He didn't want to be tamed. He wanted to feel alive. At home, things were falling apart. The pressure of work, money, and clashing personalities pulled his parents in different directions. His father had a laid-back artist soul. His mother was sharp, ambitious, and demanding. Their relationship cracked under the weight. Eventually, they divorced. Anthony didn't talk much about it, but it left a mark. That wound carried into his adult life and shaped how he viewed love, family, and trust. In 1973, Anthony graduated from high school a year early. He was just 17. He did it so he could follow his girlfriend, Nancy Posky, to Vassar College. Vassar had only started accepting male students in 1969. So, Anthony was part of one of the first groups of men there. But he didn't care about classes. He cared about Nancy. They got arrested for minor drug charges and skipped lectures constantly. He spent more time reading underground comics and getting high than studying. His obsession with relationships and escape was already clear. He once admitted he went to Vassar not for education, but because he followed Nancy. He failed most of his courses, but something else happened that changed him more than any class ever could. In the summer of 1974, he went to Provincetown, Massachusetts. It was a wild, artsy town full of outsiders. He got a cheap apartment and a job as a dishwasher at the Flagship, a busy seafood place. He made less than $2 an hour, but he didn't care. The kitchen was loud, chaotic, and full of rough, funny people. He felt at home. Within weeks, he moved up to prep cook, then line cook. The energy, the teamwork, the speed, it gave him purpose. He felt like he finally belonged. By the end of 1975, he had to make a choice. Vassar cost nearly $5,000 a year, and his grades were a disaster. His parents were tired, broke, and frustrated. He told them he wanted to drop out and become a chef. They didn't fight him. At just 19 years old, Anthony Bourdain made a choice that would change his life forever. It was the fall of 1976, and instead of continuing his time at Vassar College, he enrolled in the Culinary Institute of America. The school was located 5 miles from Vassar in Hyde Park, New York. Back then, not many people got formal culinary degrees. Kitchens were old, school and strict, but Bourdain stepped into that world willingly. The training was intense. Classes lasted 12 hours a day, filled with hands-on work, tough theory lessons, and the kind of discipline usually found in the military. He didn't just survive it. He graduated in 1978, right before he turned 23, with a real chef's diploma in hand. At the time, food in America was still mostly bland, and no one thought of chefs as famous people. But Bourdain didn't care. He took his diploma and jumped straight into the chaos of New York's kitchens, unsure if he'd even make rent the next month. For nearly 20 years, Bourdain stayed in the brutal restaurant world of New York City. Through the late 70s and the 80s, he worked in places like the Supper Club, 1 Fifth Avenue, and Sullivan's. His life was nonstop pressure. He often worked 60 to 70 hours a week. Kitchens weren't peaceful. They were loud, hot, and harsh. One mistake could cost you your job. He once described how a Friday night at Loala felt like a war zone. Smoke and grease filled the air. The cooks moved fast and pushed hard. He joked that he'd run over his own grandmother just to keep the kitchen running. The pay was awful. In the 1980s, he earned less than $500 a week. Injuries happened all the time. Tempers exploded. Drugs and alcohol were common ways to deal with the stress. This wasn't some TV version of being a chef. It was real, rough, and exhausting. But through all of it, Bourdain kept going, bonding with other cooks over scars and sweat. By the early 80s, things started to spiral out of control. Bourdain's life looked wild from the outside, but inside, it was falling apart. He started using heroin, then cocaine, then more LSD, meth, mushrooms, pills. He once said he searched the carpet for anything that looked like drugs. Sometimes he smoked paint chips, hoping they'd work. He became mean and careless. He admitted he was awful to the people around him. He bullied dishwashers. He yelled at waiters. He was selfish, loud, and lost. But even at his lowest, he kept drinking. He said the memory of heroin was so dark it scared him away from ever touching it again. He never forgot the image of himself looking in the mirror with a needle in his arm. That moment stayed with him. Years later, he said that darkness helped shape who he became. The man who would tell raw, honest stories about food and life. Bourdain got married in 1985. His wife was Nancy Pukowski, someone he had known since high school. She was 2 years older and part of the same crowd he hung around with as a teenager. When Vassar College started accepting men, he followed her there. They had a wild and messy connection, often using drugs together and sneaking into restaurant kitchens during work hours. Their marriage lasted almost 20 years, but it was far from peaceful. As Bourdain's career picked up in the late 90s, the cracks in their relationship grew deeper. He admitted that fame and travel pulled him away. He said Nancy saw that as a threat, something that poisoned their bond.